So I'm going to talk a bit about how we kind of our philosophy of course design. And so I'm going to start with this one. Well, it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier about that asterisk of thinking differently. It's important to realize that even though we can really do anything online, we do believe that not every lesson that is effective in the brick and mortar classroom will work in the online classroom, and that's okay. But the opposite is also true. Some lessons are going to work way better in the online classroom than they ever did in the brick and mortar classroom. And I think especially with kind of the sort of panicked last minute, let's throw our classes online, hashtag remote learning that we've been seeing for the past few months, what the reaction from a lot of teachers is that this can't be done. I've seen it, oh my gosh, I've seen it so many times. This can't be done, this can't be done. And I understand where that's coming from, because if I only had 3 weeks to put my entire class online, I'd probably be saying, it can't be done, it can't be done. It can be done, you just need some time and, and energy to make it happen. But you always have to keep in mind that you're designing for an online medium. And you can't just take something that you did in a brick and mortar classroom one way and just throw it into a Zoom meeting. It just doesn't always work. So maybe sometimes it will, and you get lucky and it just works in both mediums. But it's always important to keep in the mindset of an online teacher. How am I going to make this work in the online environment, regardless of whether or not it worked in the brick and mortar environment? So these are a few ideas I'm going to go over. I'm about to switch over to screen share, so I just wanted you to see the 5 points I'm going to be covering. And the first is that we build our classes in Blackboard. Blackboard is our learning management system. So everything I'm about to show you is in Blackboard, but that said, you can take any of this information and apply it in Google Classrooms, or even outside of a learning or Canvas, or take it outside of a learning management system and use other apps to kind of create lessons that aren't connected to a specific system. So give me just a minute here while I switch over to my class. All right, can everybody see that all right? So this is just one lesson that I pulled out of one of my classes to show you as an example of kind of a lesson that's built on the idea of the flip model of learning. Okay, so the flip model basically says that we're going to allow our students to do the work that they can do independently, I should say, and that we can provide for them independently, and we're going to let them do that first. Okay, I should point out here also that we only meet twice a week in our school. We're not coming in Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, right? So when we talk about the flip model, we open up a folder of work for the students on one day, and then they have several days to work with that material before we ever meet synchronously on Zoom. So with that in mind, this is an example of something that I would give students. In my composition and analysis class, we read The Hate You Give. And this is obviously a book that students really have to do a lot of processing with, both because of the emotions that it brings up in them, the questions that it brings up in them, but also because there's a lot of terms and pop culture references and ideas in there that they're not familiar with. So here's 2 videos that I could share in a Zoom session, right? Like I could say, okay, today we're going to explain some of these references in the book, and I could share these videos with my students and they'd get it, right? But I don't want to use my class time for that, because let me tell you, my students are going to take that full hour and a half to talk about this section of the book. I guarantee it. I'm probably going to have to cut them off and be like, okay, we're going to have to keep talking about the book next class, because there's a lot of reactions to this book. So I don't want to spend a whole lot of time watching these videos, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give the videos to them ahead of time and let them watch these on their own, process it. You can see that this is actually a reading journal that the videos are embedded in. And I ask students to just free write. All they have to do is free write in their reading journal. In fact, they can even post a video if they want to. They're allowed to post a video instead of writing. Anything for them just to kind of think out loud or on paper to process that section of the book that they just read, to kind of come to terms with, oh, this is what the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air is. Last year I had a student who was like, Will Smith, is that Genie? Like, yeah, it is. Yes, Genie, and also the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. So you know, they can watch that. They can understand what code switching means and what it is and kind of how it ties into the book. Now when we get into our Zoom meeting in our live session, they're ready to go. Like, they're ready to talk about code switching. They've thought about it. They've thought about how they've code switched in their own lives, how that would be different for people in different situations, how the TV show ties in, everything. Like, they're ready to talk about it. And so that leads us to have a really productive and student-centered discussion about that section of the book. So that's just an example, one example of how we use the flip model of learning, is give them the material first. That way, the synchronous time, the live session time, can be used for collaboration and discussion, which Jessica and Carly are going to get into in more detail later. The next thing I wanted to show you was, the next bullet point was curation versus invention. Now, Jessica and Carly have both mentioned that some instructors do make their own instructional videos. And we do. We also use other people's videos a lot, and we use each other's material a lot, because it takes a ton of work and energy to make a whole lot of presentations and instructional videos. And again, kind of in the panic mode that I've been observing over the past few months, I see a lot of teachers who are thrown into this environment going, oh my gosh, I have to make so many videos. I have to make so many like, there's so much I have to do. And I'm like, yeah, that's a lot. I mean, it takes a good amount of effort and energy to make those videos, which is why we do it over the summer, given, you know, tons of time and space in order to make that happen. So what our advice to you is, don't reinvent the wheel. If the material's out there, don't be afraid to use it. It's out there for a reason. It's out there for teachers to use. So if I scroll up here, you'll see in this folder, this is for my American literature class, I have this beautiful PowerPoint. I didn't make this PowerPoint. Jessica made this PowerPoint. So Jessica, thank you for this lovely PowerPoint that she made several years before for a different section of American literature. And she gave that to me to use, and I appreciate it greatly. So you can definitely share material with your colleagues, which I'm sure most teachers already do, but for some reason, I think that gets lost online. You know, we move online and all of a sudden everybody's like, I have to do all this by myself. Also, in this folder about women and realism, I could, I guess, make a video of myself explaining the role of women in the 19th century. But John Green does it a lot better than I do, and the kids love him. So, like, why would I do that when John Green does it so much better? So I'm just going to go ahead and let him and embed this video into my course for the students to use. I will say this, I'm going to put in another little asterisk here. I give myself a Patreon budget every month. I think it's important that for the sources that we do use over and over and over off YouTube, like I use a lot of Crash Course. There's a couple other sources that I really like for educational material. I throw them a few bucks every month. So it's just kind of the ethical thing to do. Yes, you can borrow, it's out there for a reason, but also maybe consider, you know, giving yourself a little monthly budget to give back. So that's curation versus invention. I mean, honestly, we're guides, right? We're not the sage on the stage, as Jessica said, we're guides. And part of being a guide is sometimes guiding students through other people's material. That's okay. Another video I love is the TED Ed, the TED-Ed introduction to Macbeth. My students read Macbeth, and I'm like, I'm not going to animate anything as beautifully as TED-Ed is. So I'm just going to use that. It's okay. Let it be. Let it wash away the guilt of using other people's sources and reduce your load. So the third bullet point was structure and consistency. I'm going to repeat that because it's so important. Structure and consistency. Our students crave structure and consistency. I think, in my observations, even more so than they do in the brick and mortar classroom. A lot of what we've had to come to terms with as online teachers is that our students need possibly more structure online than they do in the brick and mortar classroom. And it kind of seemed counterintuitive. Like, they can handle different classrooms. They should be able to handle different classes online. But what we found is that causes them a lot of anxiety, unnecessary anxiety and stress. So finally we were like, we're going to give them consistency wherever we can and loads of structure. So I'm still on this folder, this Women in Realism folder, because I want you to see this course menu that I have here along the side. This course menu will be essentially the black parts: course information, course content, course tools, course resources. That'll be the same in every class within the Davidson Academy Online. Okay, we created a standardized structure that each student had to follow for their course menu so that students would always know, entering a Blackboard classroom, what to look for on the left-hand side of the page. We don't want to standardize everything because our teachers have a lot of creative flexibility to make the classes what they want them to be, but structurally to have that consistency throughout each and every course, we need to standardize some things, and the menu format is something we could standardize. So this folder that I showed you, this covers about 3 weeks of material. So if I kind of just quickly scroll through here, you'll see there's a lot in here, right? Another little digression here, you'll notice that we have a textbook. We do have a textbook for this class, a physical textbook, but I also provide links to the stories online as well, just to give students kind of a choice of how they want to interact with the story. Maybe they want to print it up and write on the printout. I've had students who put the PDFs into Kindle books and read them that way, where they can annotate. I let them decide. I let them choose how they want to interact with the text. So that's a folder with a whole lot of material in it. So you're probably wondering, like, how does a student know what to do, right? So I'm going to move over to this tab. This is the weekly announcement that aligns with that folder. Every single one of our online instructors posts a weekly announcement. Again, that's the consistency that we offer our students, is for each class, they're going to get an announcement that tells them exactly what to do, when all the due dates are, and sometimes even what to look forward to the following week. This particular example, I don't have anything for the following week. Not everybody's announcement is going to look the same as mine. This is just my particular template that I created for this class. But the idea is the same for each teacher. You must post an announcement every week that shows the structure of the week's work. Okay, that way, again, we give them that consistency. They understand what the expectations are for each week. The last bullet point that I had, let me get back to the presentation here. Oh, I skipped forward a slide. The last bullet point I had was reflection, revision, and flexibility. The great thing about having a course built online is that in the summer, you can just copy that course over and start making all kinds of revisions and changes to it. You don't have to rebuild it completely for the next year. I think all of us, Carly, Jessica, and myself, all keep a kind of a journal along with our course every year of what worked and what didn't work. so that then summertime comes and we can go back into the course and just easily make those adjustments. But reflection, revision, and flexibility, because sometimes we need to make changes mid-year, right? Sometimes we just realize something's not working, it's not going to work. For example, in my American literature class this year, I had a gut instinct that I wanted to do another novel. The students were doing so well with the novels, and I contacted Jessica. I'm like, what do you think? I'm gonna switch the end of the year. And she said, I think that's a great idea. And I cut out the whole whatever I had planned for the last 4 weeks of American literature, and I put in another novel that actually ended up working really well. So we have a lot of flexibility in that way to kind of react and respond to what our students are showing us.